Welcome to the Mischief. I'm Vallen, and this is Better with Mods. Today we're going to be covering the Hibachi, Crucible, Turntable, and the Filtered Hopper. I may also add in a few other choice items as well, but what we're going to really be needing to progress with Better with Mods is going to be stoked items, and this is not stoked, that's just fire. Stoked is blue flames, and that will allow you to gain access to a stoked crucible, as well as the possible stoked kiln, which, as you see here, a standard kiln, you don't even need the one on the top, but it's basically going to have the blue flame as well. And in order to get that, you're going to need to make some progress, but first, let's actually show you how to make a crucible. You'll probably be needing this little item here, a turntable, which is a very simple device made with just some stone, some slabs, or siding rather, that you're going to need from a saw, which I've already covered, wood gear, and a clock, which in this is actually still made pretty cheap. You're going to need nether quartz, that's what that dark item is in the center. And then you can make yourself a turntable. Once you've made one, though, you're going to want to power it. If you look here, I currently have, through the glass, I have some of the gears here going on. I turned everything off for the moment because it can get quite loud and noisy. But it will then power up through here, and it will turn the items that are put on top of it. Namely, you're going to want to put clay in that place. But let's get this running, and then we can start seeing some of the things that it will actually work with. Well, let's start with a lever. As you can see, it is rotating the lever. Okay. And we've got things like a redstone torch. If I put this on here with, let's say, a block. Let's grab a piece of grass here, and I can put this on the side. It will rotate that around it slowly. Now, you might be noticing there's like some kind of little button switch thing. This is the speed with which it will actually rotate the blocks. You'll need to do it with an empty hand, as most things are with this. So all the way to the right, it's going to be a little bit slower. All the way to the left is going to be very fast. So basically it's just going to be slow to fast. Or, I mean, sorry, fast to slow. And it starts off with the higher setting. I usually like to have it set at the second one, just because that's a little bit faster, or a little bit faster than the, or slower than the top speed there. Now, it will also affect other things. So if I have, let's put a grass block over here so I can actually put this in there. You can have a hopper actually rotate around, as an example. I can still access the inventory, put this in here, and so on. It will also distribute the items out of it. You can put things like observer blocks on there, which of course will give a redstone signal as they are rotated around, because things are changing as they do it. You can do other things as well, like put switch rails on here. It's pretty crazy, so you can power this thing as such, but it'll constantly keep going. Obviously, you can slow it down by changing the settings on it, but I mean, it's just another thought of things that will work. And yes, it will actually connect with them, but then, you know, once you get up there, you'll actually hit the side of it. So it's pretty interesting. But all that stuff, that's not even what we're here for. Bleh, bleh. We're gonna take this clay and put it on top, and it will slowly turn into something else. Now, there are several stages of the clay that this will turn into. Actually, I'm going to speed this up a little bit. There we go. There's the first one, Unfired Crucible, which is the one we want. An Unfired Planter, which you can use to plant things without tilling the earth. An Unfired Vase, which is kind of a way of a temporary treasure chest. And an Unfired Urn. That's going to be important as well. Anytime you want those, you just mine them up before it turns into the next one. This is why I recommend putting it on the other setting if you're unsure, things are going a little too fast for you or whatever while it's making these things. In this case, we just want a crucible, and therefore that's what I'm going to grab. Now, it may take just a second or two for that to happen. There we go. And I would just break it with in survival mode, and it should be fine. But we're also going to grab a little something else. Once it gets past the planter, which, by the way, you can actually put all sorts of different kinds of dirt, soul sand, etc. in it, and use it to plant things, including trees, like your own little garden and stuff. But that's not what we're going for. We're going for the Unfired Urn. This is going to help as well. For now, I'm just going to break that so that it stops doing its thing. turn this off because we don't need it at the moment. And we're going to move on to, of course, using the unfired crucible. You have to put it in a kiln, which will then heat that up and get it going. Let's turn this off so that you can see, because you shouldn't have a blue flame at this point. Instead, it'll just be a orange or yellow flame. There we go. Then I can put this in here, and depending on how much flame you have around it, will speed it along faster or slower. Oh no, wait, that doesn't work because it needs to be in a stoked kiln. So the crucible, while you may have it ready and set, is not actually going to do anything until you have the next part, which is going to be a hibachi, because that is going to make flame. Right now, I just have orange flame underneath there, and then you'll also need to have it being powered by one of these, of course, the bellows, which I have shown you in the past. So let's do another part. While that is just kind of sitting there doing absolutely nothing, I'm going to show you how to make a hibachi. Now, hibachi is going to be a relatively simple process, but it is a process nonetheless. A heating element, for example, requires a bit of blaze powder, either hemp fibers or string, and redstone in a cauldron. You toss it in there, take a little time, and you'll get a heating element. That's probably one of the easier things, besides, of course, stone and redstone. Now, concentrated hellfire. That's going to be a little bit more of a challenge. For that, you will need a cauldron, of course, but you'll need hellfire dust, which is obtained through a filtered hopper. So, filtered hopper is a whole other machine in itself. It has lots of pluses and some big minuses you're going to want to be aware of. You have to be careful on how you use this. So the recipe is just a bunch of wood products. As you can see here, you'll need a saw in order to make this, and it works kind of like a hopper, but it doesn't actually output. So for example, I have nothing in here. I can throw things in the top, and you can see it actually kind of fills up a little bit with the things that I'm tossing in, and you can actually access it, and it keeps the items inside. It did not just put it into the chest or anything. So it's kind of a hopper, but it won't put it into another inventory. It's got its own small inventory for that. Now, how to use this? It has multiple uses. In the simplest case, is to make a piece of wicker, which of course is just a bunch of sugar cane, and insert that into this, which is the filter slot, if you will. It actually then looks like it has wicker in the top, and you can take some gravel, and you'll get flint from that, with a possibility of getting either red sand or regular sand as an output. So I throw that in there. I got flint, and yes, it will pop out on top of it, so you're going to want to probably work with that. And it will then just distribute down here. In this case, I didn't get either one. It's just a chance of getting that. Now, on top of that, I can also use another filter. And if you want, you can always, click on the cogwheel here to see the different recipes. You see we've got ground netherrack, which is netherrack in a millstone. That's actually going to be the next thing we want. Oh, sorry. We have sand here. I forgot. It kind of just, deposited the stuff off on the side there. But I also have a setup going on. So let's divert for a second. I realize that it's going from one to the other. I'm sorry, but this is just so that you can understand the process and how everything works. So obviously you're going to need some netherrack in a millstone of some sort, whether it be powered manually or, well, automatically. And you might want to cover your ears, because once you activate this, things start getting a bit loud. It starts making gas noises. Nothing bad is going to happen from this, short of loud noises. So there you go. That's done. You now have ground netherrack, which is great. I can then take and add a different filter. You notice here it is now empty again. I grab soul sand. This is going to be your other filter type. You're not going to want to throw it in. You want to place it in the filter slot. You'll then see it appear up here, and you can throw ground netherrack on top. And you get hellfire dust and a really weird gas noise. That's because you have to be very careful. If it's unpowered, bad things can happen. Here, I'll leave one in here. Every 8 one of these ground netherrack you toss in, or 8 soul dust, as that will come up shortly here, bad things can happen. And it's only on the 8th one, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. So just keep an eye open. There's nothing nearby. I mean, sure, there's this weird sapling here. I'll get into that some other time, but... Oh, it broke, and there is a gas. Let's just fix this real quick. There we go. Something you're going to want to be careful for. It's kind of a temporary one-of spawner for ghasts, if you so desire. Yeah, and so you can get ghast tears that way, but it will also break your stuff there. It will drop some of the contents, your filters will be dropped out and so on. So you will have some leftover bits, like I've got oak wood plank siding left from the filtered hopper that was broken in that place. I actually had another one in my inventory. But yeah, that's something you got to be careful for. If you don't want to have a gas spawn and your filtered hopper get broken, I recommend powering it. So if you notice over here, I have a filtered hopper right there, and I put some glass here just so that you could see. And it's being powered right now. And therefore, when I toss in a whole bunch of the soul sand, soul dust, or ground netherrack, either one, it will not actually generate any of those. And in this case, I'm actually going to turn this on, and I'm going to turn this on. And that should start, there we go. I have an automated system set up right now so that it will take care of things for me. If I drop a bunch of soul dust in here, you see nothing spawned, which usually on the 8th one it would spawn a ghast, so you have to be very cautious. You're going to need a whole bunch of hellfire dust, but you notice it's gone. Where did it go? It's because I'm using the mechanic of the bellows to actually push the contents after they've been changed from the filtered hopper into the hopper. Now, I did have to put some items on the side here, otherwise they might just rest on the edge instead of going into the hopper. And then everything goes in, and you don't need to worry about it despawning. So there you go. A little simplicity involved in that, and I got the contents I was looking for, which it turned them into sawdust and so on. Now, with some ground netherrack, I've got a whole bunch here. You can use it in other methods, and that is with the filtered hopper, you can use it to make soul urns, which will be useful later on. Very useful. In fact, you're going to want to cook one of these up in a stoked kiln as well. But we can't do that just yet, so therefore we still need to get that hibachi going. Now that we've got the hellfire dust, we can use that to make concentrated hellfire. By just tossing 8 of them in a cauldron will get me 1 of those. Just 1. So let's put in this. There we go. An 8th one, and then that should start cooking up. That'll give me 1 ingot. I will need 3 of them for the hibachi to be made, but that's just an example of how you can make it yourself. But let's take a step back for a second. If you come on over here, you probably noticed when I was looking up the hellfire dust, it has multiple uses. You can make nether sludge, which can be used to make a more efficient way of making nether bricks. Which of course potash is just about any kind of wood product tossed into a crucible or a cauldron. But nether coal is one of the items you can make in a cauldron with hellfire dust. And that is made from 1 coal or charcoal ground up in a millstone, is then combined with a piece of hellfire dust, which, you know, it's just a bit of ground up netherrack really. We'll make 4 nether coal, so you can turn 1 coal or charcoal into 4. And yes, they burn the same. In this mod, they actually burn twice as long. In this case, I used them both, 1 of each, and they did 16 items individually. So I therefore could do an entire stack of items just off of 1 piece of coal or charcoal with how this is working out, combining it with a piece of netherrack. So it's very efficient, very effective, and I highly recommend you use it. But there's also other stuff you can use it for. As you saw at the beginning of the video, I had some of this stuff, some blasting oil, as well as a little something else. That's right, it's a stick of dynamite. First, let me grab this, and then let me grab this. So, blasting oil. Recipe for that, as you saw, a little bit of tallow, which is just some kind of meat or zombie flesh tossed in a stoked cauldron. And dynamite, and a hellfire dust with this will make blasting oil. You can then use that with an explosive fuse and a bit of sawdust to make dynamite, which an explosive fuse, by the way, it's very simple, just, you know, string and gunpowder. Now, how these work. Blasting oil, it just explodes upon throwing it on the ground, provided that there is a little bit of space. Now, dynamite works a little different. You just right click and you'll throw one down on the ground, and then there's a little bit of a fuse, and then it blows up. Now, there is a secondary effect of the dynamite that is kind of cool. I thought this was pretty neat, and that is fishing. You can use it by throwing it in water, and you'll wait. You don't want to toss them all on top of each other because they will blow each other up. And you see here, they make fish. It is the dwarven fishing rod of sorts, so you can get fish very easily that way. You don't have to wait for it. It's just a matter of making the dynamite sticks. As I said before, though, it does take a stoked cauldron, and you need to handle this with care. It can be very explosive and blow all your stuff up. So, yeah, just be aware of that. Now, to make a stoked fire, you just need that hibachi, which, if you recall, recipe is just a bunch of concentrated hellfire plus heating element. Makes you a hibachi. Now, they will accept redstone signals, so you can just use levers. In the case that I used for this example, I used redstone blocks. It was just simpler for me so that I could do that. And then you have it activated so that the bellows, which is down here, which covers a 3x3 area in front of it, then stokes it. In this case, I just have it going on a redstone circuit going around in a circle, keeping it very simple and effective to keep the fire going. So it has to keep going, pulsing the redstone signal like on and off. If you just leave it on or just leave it off, it's just going to do like one pump and that's it. It's not going to stay maintained. So therefore it will not maintain things being stoked. This is now considered a stoked cauldron, even though it is a cauldron. This is a crucible, which is going to need to be made via a stoked fire. So if you hook up this old unfired crucible with your kiln to also have a stoked fire, it will then start smelting and make yourself that crucible that we're looking for. And these breaking animations just mean that it's actually doing something. So there we go. I now have another crucible, which is made as before with the stoked kiln. And you can also make that blasting powder and dynamite and stuff like that as you want before. So what does a crucible allow you to do? A whole lot of stuff. Stoked crucible has like 30 different recipes. It does not work like a cauldron. It will not cook the same recipes, and a stoked cauldron won't cook the same recipes either, so you're going to have to turn that on and off. I recommend you also do the same thing. You can set it up with a 3x3 area, and it will also speed things up with how fast it cooks things. But you can use it for a lot of things, to reclaim items. For instance, you can cook cobblestone to regular smooth stone in it. The different granite, diorite, andesite, and so on. You can reclaim different items that you find in the world. Can give you, like an iron pickaxe, can give you a couple ingots back. So if you have mobs dropping things in a mob farm, you can get a lot of resources that way, as well as armors and such. It's all pretty good stuff. But primarily we're going to need to be making this in order to get a soul-forged steel ingot in order to progress on. But to do that, you would need a soul urn. And I realize that I'm not covering the Soul Forged Steel, but I feel I should cover the Soul Urn because it involves a hopper, or a filtered hopper in this case. Now remember, I have an unfired urn, so therefore now that we have access to a stoked kiln, I can then put this in place and it should start to cook. There we go, a cooked urn. This is not a soul urn, this is just an urn at this point. I recommend you make a whole bunch of these because a soul urn, or an urn even, will only ever store one use. So therefore, having multiples of these would be useful if you are making a whole bunch of the hellfire ingots. So if I place down a regular urn that has been cooked, let's get rid of the unfired one, underneath a filtered hopper, it will actually place it here. Now this is another way to avoid the issue of tossing in ground netherrack or something like that. So if I take, let's do the 8. Nothing happened, right? There's no ghasts. It normally would, but instead it created one of these. Let's pick this up, a soul urn. So it took that ghast soul that was going to be spawned into the world and instead put it into this urn here, which can be used for other crafting materials as well as saplings. And speaking of, I might as well show you this while I'm at it. Just a little extra bit on the side here. If you are to use this, you can use it to make multiple different things, like a void urn. You can use it to make an observer with the different items here. Pistons are now accessible to you. In a cauldron, you can then make nether growth spores, a bloodwood sapling. Stoked crucibles allow you to make soul-forged steel, as well as the soul-forged steel anvil, but what we're looking at right now, I'm just going to show you this last thing before I go, and that's the bloodwood sapling, which is really, really interesting. It takes one of all the different saplings, plus a bit of netherwort, and 8 soul urns will make you one of these. And let me tell you, one is all you'll need. So if I were to break the bottom here, bad things happen. Not really. In the overworld, this is probably the safest place to plant one of these things. You have to plant it on soul sand. But as you cut things, it will make the same ghast noises because it doesn't like that. It does act in a similar way. You can always get more saplings from this. But in order to make this work, you can plant it here on soul sand. It doesn't plant on other stuff. And it'll just sit there until you use a soul urn on it. And then in that, you just right click above it and you'll automatically throw it on there and it will spawn in one of these, a bloodwood sapling. In the overworld, that's pretty much it. You can just keep on doing that. It doesn't seem like much. In the nether, it is a totally different story. Here I am in the nether. I have a waypoint set over here. As you notice, it is called Tree. And before I go down there, though, as you might have already seen some of it, let's take a bit of soul sand, put it down here, and I can plant this here, same as before. I can then take a soul urn, which it will use up the soul urn in this process, and it will make yourself some kind of sapling, which will grow forever. As long as the area is loaded, this will continue to grow. Very slowly, but it will. To give an example, this is about what that one grew into after maybe an hour or two of the area being loaded. Let me change game modes. If I were to fly into the center here, you'll see that there's a lot of, that's just the beacon, but there's a lot of bloodwood now that you can chop and harvest and so on, or you can just, make things interesting. And this is going to continue to grow. As you notice, it's starting to grow up above now. And it will continue and continue and fill up the entire nether potentially, but it's only going to do so very slowly over time. Like I said, this is just like an hour or so, just letting it, oh, there it goes, it just popped a little bit over here, and it will just keep on expanding. There's another one, and each one of these is going to expand further and further. So it's something you're going to want to be careful of. If you're not in the nether, then you should be fine, and you don't really need to worry about it too much because things aren't going to be loaded, but otherwise, yeah, it's something to watch out for. And it only works that way in the nether, so therefore it shouldn't really be anything to like kind of destroy people's bases or grief them with, because unless of course they're based in the nether, but hopefully people don't use it in that fashion. But just about everything in Minecraft can be used to grief. So there you go, that's pretty much it. I mean, there's a lot more to go with Better with Mods, but this should at least get you your Hibachi, your stoked kiln and crucible, your filtered hoppers, as well as your turntable, among a few other interesting items as you do. So if you guys enjoyed this video, be sure to give a like, comment, subscribe, and as always, be sure to spread the mischief to others. I think that they'll enjoy this kind of content too. And until next time, folks, I'll see ya.